Hi everyone and welcome to another Bowls Australia Zoom catch-up. I'm Clive Adams and today I'm joined by the newly elected Bowls Australia President in Bob Boorman. Welcome Bob and congratulations on your appointment.
Oh, thanks very much, Clive. Thanks for the opportunity to have a chat with you as well.
Yes, fantastic. Obviously, being on boards and being around bowls clubs is pretty second nature to you. Tell us a bit about your experience in those areas.
Well, I've been around bowls clubs for too long, probably. I remember going to the Adelaide Bowling Club when I was about 5 with an old friend of the family before the bowls club moved to its present place in 1959. So my mum and dad played the game. I went to play at Adelaide when I was about in my late 20s, and I played for about 10 or 15 years there. And then I had a break because the kids were arriving and growing up. And then I went back to Adelaide about 12 years ago and have played there ever since. So Adelaide's been a pretty big part of my bowls.
I think it's probably a story many can relate to. You know, found the sport early, had a little bit of a break, and got
Yeah.
back into it again. So, and what about your involvement in boards? You certainly had some involvement on the Bowls Australia board.
Yes, I have. I got onto the National Smith Family Board many years ago. I was on that board for about 9 years, and that was a really big insight for me as to how people live with disadvantage and what we could all be doing to help that get solved. I was on two government boards, the Housing Trust Board and the Renewal SA Board in South Australia. And then more recently, obviously the board of Adelaide Bowling Club, I've been president, had been for 5 years, and then Bowls SA board for about two or three, and then the last 4 on the BA board. So boards have just really been a great way to contribute to things changing and getting some ideas across and listening to other people as well. So it's been really good fun for me.
Fantastic. Give us a bit of an insight into Bob Boorman, the person. So 50 years experience in government, private sector construction, and of course a proud South Aussie as well.
Well, I've been really lucky. I've lived my whole life in South Australia, but I've done a fair bit of work interstate. I've lived in Adelaide and worked in Melbourne and did some things in New South Wales as well. So yeah, it's been fantastic. I have had to. I first kicked off at 16 and a bit, and as a young kid in the state government, it happened to be the public buildings department. So I grew up there, worked there for about 22 years, and then headed off into the private sector, both housing and then more general construction. I've never really seen myself as a builder. I'm not really an engineer or anything like that, but I went to uni late and really focused on management and project management. Ended up being the chief of Boulderstone for South Australia and a couple of other construction companies, and then consulted to the government in the nation building for 4 years. And then I've just been in charge of some major redevelopment projects around South Australia. So I've been really lucky. I consult now to some companies, and I have a wonderful family. I've been married for 45, I think it is, years, 3 kids, all adults. We get on great, and so I very enjoyable of my life.
Very good. Very good. What approach do you bring to the role of Bowls Australia president?
Well, that's going to be a bit me and a bit the world, I think. I'm not very well known. I understand that, but I just see the whole thing as a family. You know, we've got a federation model that you and everyone's aware of, and trying to bring the family together as much as I can to be available to state presidents and really anyone who wants to talk about the way we all work together rather than criticising, to try and add value. So that's one of the main things. I think the other things are around continuing the work I've been doing with a lot of other people on the governance of the sport, trying to see how we can smooth it up, how can we make it more efficient, how can we make it more real for the game as we're seeing it emerge in the future. So that'll be really important. And I suppose the other one, Clive, that is to try and get everyone to think about the formal game we play and to see how we can make that game more and more attractive by thinking about when we're playing it, how available it is to the next generation who don't have the same priorities as the older ones might have, to try and see how we can deal with this huge group of social bowlers, barefoot bowlers around us. They outnumber the formal bowlers by 2 or 3 to 1 now, and that's where a lot of the finance for clubs comes from. I'm not sure, Clive, whether we should be actually worried anymore about trying to get them across to formal bowls. I think we should be rather finding ways of getting them to enjoy the game in their own way, a bit free from some of the rules that you and I might know.
Yeah, it's in a way it's a redefinition of a bowler, isn't it?
It is absolutely right. And I think there's a lot of people who struggle with that, Clive. You know, a lot of us struggle with that. So you know, you'll hear me and people will hear me talking about saying, let's worry about growing that group. Don't worry about the fact that they don't want to wear a uniform in the middle of the day in the heat of South Australia's summer. Don't worry about that. Worry about their form of membership we can have for those guys, the way they can contribute to the game, you know, short forms of game that we can get them playing, as well as the formal game and then the high performance game. But I'm a clubland man. You know, I've seen social bowlers. There's over 6,000, I think, night owlers in South Australia, hardly any of whom ever put down a formal bowl on a Saturday afternoon. So they're the sort of challenges I think are ahead of us.
Absolutely. You touched on the governance review. Give us a little bit more detail of what's gone around there. So you've headed up a panel that's looked at the governance across Australia.
Yes, yeah, that's been really good. I mean, the report's just been published. We involved a lot of people across Australia in getting there, thinking it through. We have now produced, with some help from our consulting team, over 100 pages. Now that might seem a bit daunting, but it's very comprehensive. So I really hope that people will look it up. We'll get it up on our website sometime soon and read through it and see how carefully people have thought about the structure that we need for our game going forward. And the next step now is that the board's looked at it. It's back with the STAs and their boards. We will set up a small group now to not to push anything so much as to encourage and to help each STA to go in whatever direction. And what we've recognised that there's no one model that everyone says, oh, that's how to do it. Bowls is a different game in every state. It's not like other sports where you have a tennis racket and a net. Everyone plays a different game. So what we'll be doing is trying to help some people share more services from BA, maybe from each other, to see whether they can reduce some of the structure below the state level. Maybe that can be smoothed up. To see whether we could pilot exercises between states and BA to see how that goes, and to just generally think about smoothing up, speeding up, making it more efficient the whole way the thing works. So I'll be certainly continuing on with that with others. You probably get it from the way I'm talking, but I'm just sure there's a lot we can do without being directive, but being helpful, encouraging people to think it through. And that's where that's heading, Clive, in the next 12 months.
You come into the role at a challenging time, Bob. 2020 hasn't been a great year for many Australians and for many of our clubs. What's your message to people out there that have been finding 2020 pretty tough?
Oh, look, I understand that completely, and some tougher than others, as we know. People in Victoria clearly have had a terrible time, and clubs have struggled. BA to some extent can help in some ways. I think the message I'd have is, if there's any good that comes out of it, it's just a good time to sit and have a think about some of the things I've just been talking about, how we're structured, how we govern, what's going to happen in the next 10 years. But bowls has survived lots of things. Bowls has survived everything to now, over 100 and whatever it is years. So I'm sure the clubs will get out of it. But I think if all of the clubs can keep talking to each other, keep talking to people like BA, even directly, so that we can understand what are the real issues. Recently, Neil and the previous president, Darryl, went around and did that tour that's coming up, I think, as a special on the Bowl Show. Just some of the learnings from these tiny little clubs battling away, but they'll emerge. They'll emerge. That all sounds very positive, but the truth is some clubs will struggle to go forward, not because of Corona, but because of other reasons. So we should be looking, I think I chair another committee on facilities. How do we amalgamate people? How do we get councils and local government generally to look at how they could help clubs to grow with better community facilities? There's lots to do, isn't there, when you think about it?
And we certainly, on the back of what you've just said, we certainly encourage clubs out there, if you are struggling or you just want some help with something, to get in touch with the Regional Bowls Manager Network, who are more than happy to get along to your club, meet with you and help you push things forward.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit more closer to home for you, South Australia, how life is at the moment in South Australia. Obviously, you've recently been awarded life membership of the Adelaide Bowling Club, which is nice, and congratulations on that. How's life been in South Australia?
Well, as people know, probably Victoria, South Australia, Western Australia, Tasmania, it's our off-season. So to some extent, some clubs like Adelaide have full-time staff, so they've relied to some extent on the job helper scheme, but I think most other clubs have just gone through their winter. That's been tricky, as you know. You can't do this and you're not allowed to do that. You've got to take all the steps. So South Australia has had very little. It's done incredibly well to have very little cases of the corona illness within the. We're all pretty careful. I did manage to fly up to Queensland a couple of weeks ago, both to northern Queensland and to the Gold Coast, and I understand that those clubs, who normally would have a lot of Victorian tourists, have found life pretty difficult. So, but South Australia, I mean, it's a beautiful day here today. Even the Crows have won a couple of games, so that's all it takes here. Everyone's up and about, so it's great.
Let's fast forward to the end of your reign as president of Bowls Australia. How do you want people to look back at your reign, and what would be, say, one thing you'd love for them to say about your reign as president of Bowls Australia?
That I was accessible. I'd really like everyone to think that, I don't come out of, I'm not criticising these guys, I love them, but I'm not a high profile bowler. I've been around bowls for a long time, but I just really want people to feel like Bowls Australia is somewhere you can go for help, you can go to get ideas, you can go for leadership, you can go for a chat, you can have a whinge too, and I'd like to, after a year, or maybe let's hope it's two, I want people to not so much know me too well personally, that'd be nice. I just like people to feel like we were one family working for the good of the game, whether it's for a barefoot bowler at Broadbeach, whether it's for a night owl or a Hawthorn Bowling Club in Adelaide, or whether it's a high profile or a pennant bowler. All that, thinking about all those things at once and trying to make the game more and more accessible and easy for people to play. So that's what I'd like them to think, Clive.
Brilliant. Look, it's been fantastic catching up with you, Bob. We really appreciate your time. We wish you all the best in your exciting new role. And look, I'm sure we'll see you around the place, and we look forward to it.
Thanks, Clive. And look, I'm happy to have a chat to anyone, anytime at all. Really appreciate what you're doing. So keep it up.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you very much.